Hi, and welcome back to painting vintage girls on a background that I did in part 1. This is part 2, adding the girls to that background. So I just started out here painting in the dresses using those Target handmade modern paints in coral and robin egg. So I just wanted to get a first layer down and get some solid color going, so I had a starting point. So I'll just speed you through this and we'll get those dresses painted in. So now I'm just using a baby wipe to wipe back some of that color. I want to try and let some of those background papers and colors show through. Not a ton, just a hint that there's something back there, and just to give it a little more interest. So I kind of go back and forth with the baby wipe a little bit, wiping back and then kind of adding a watered down color back over the top to bring the color back up just a tad. It's just enough to show that there's something back there. Gives the dresses a little bit more texture and interest too. So now I'm to the point where I'm going to start to paint in the skin tones, and I'm using Santa's Flesh and a Ceramcoat acrylic. It's a real pale flesh tone. It's a good starting point. These features are so small that I just need a good base layer. I'll still be able to see my sketches through the paint at this point, so I'll be able to paint on the features. And I'm not much of a feet and hands artist, so I kind of tucked their hands behind their backs, and the one gal on the left, her legs kind of disappear behind the flowers at the bottom, so I didn't have to worry about her feet. And the feet on the girl that I'm painting now were just kind of pointed toe feet, no shoes, just, you know, kind of a hint of feet. So I'm just going to get all the skin tones down. So now I'm going to base in their hair, and I'm just using the same burnt umber fluid acrylic that I've used throughout this project for the girl's hair on the left. And again, when you're painting this small, I mean, you're not going to get a whole lot of detail. At least I'm not going to, for this piece, bother to try to get a whole lot of detail. I am getting texture from the papers and things that are glued on the board underneath, so that adds to it. And I'm leaving some brush strokes in her hair just to kind of give an indication of strands of hair. And a little bit of a bouffant, just a touch, to go along with the sort of 50s, 60s style dresses. A little fringy on the bottom, just little wisps of hair. These girls were so much fun to paint. I'm not used to painting faces that small, so I just tried to keep them really simple. Not at all happy with their noses, but it is what it is. It's just a fun piece, and I worked on it a little bit to try to improve their faces, and just it got to the point where it was like, okay, I'm satisfied. So then for the girl on the right, I wanted to mix it up a little bit and bring in a little bit of yellow tone, so I'm using yellow ochre in the Arteza or Arteza, I'm not sure how you say that. It's the heavy body acrylic, and I mixed a little of the burnt umber into that just to kind of dull it down. It was a little too bright for this piece, and so the girl on the right is going to get some blondish hair. Again, just keeping the style simple, and I just did one coat on her hair, and a lot of the text is showing through that coat of paint, which I liked the way it looked, so I just left it at. So I do stop and dry layers so that I'm not dragging my hand through wet paint as I move from one part to the other. So I did stop to give it a little dry here. So now it's time to finish up the clothing a little bit, add some color to the belts that I gave them. So I'm just going to use the same brown iron oxide or burnt umber for this girl's belt. She has a nice wide 50s style belt. I had one just like that, only it was red. Wish I had that waistline. Wouldn't that be nice? I never had that waistline. And then just to kind of keep the whole thing cohesive, I decided to use the robin egg for the belt on the girl on the right. She has a narrow belt. Sorry about my head. Small spaces, I need to get closer to see what I'm doing. There we go. And we'll add some details to those belts in just a little bit. Started to put the buttons on her dress with a brush, and I wasn't getting a nice circle, so came back with a Q-tip and took it off. I have a better idea. So the girl on the left has just a hint of a white glove showing as it's going behind her dress. So I just added that with some white gesso. And I'll give you a close-up of where we're at so far. You can still see the features in their faces, and like the way that you can see bits and pieces of what's in the background showing through their dresses. I just sketched them on with a regular pencil. I'm using a peel and draw charcoal pencil to get some shading going and so you can see some of the folds in the material of the dresses. I really like working with the charcoal pencils. It's just a fast, easy way to create shadows. You do have to be a bit careful with any other water media that you might be putting on top. You can use a workable fixative to fix it so that it doesn't smear when you get it to the point where you want it to stay. But I'm just basically putting in all of those marks that I had penciled in when I drew them. Just putting the charcoal down, and then I will activate it with some water on a small brush and just move it around a little bit, soften it back so that it becomes more part of the painting. And they are the micro perm markers. So I'm going to revisit the buttons here, and just went back to the burnt umber fluid acrylic and picked some up on the end of my paintbrush and got nice round, little bit dimensional buttons. And then I'm going to do the same thing but in the robin's egg and put buttons on the other dress. You have to be careful with the heat tool that those dimensional kind of bumps for the buttons don't bubble up off of the surface. I'm trying to keep it kind of high in a way, but I've too many times drug my hand through dots like that, so I'm trying to get them dried off a little bit here. So I decided the girl there on the left needed a pearl necklace, so I'm just using that ball end stylus that I showed you and dipping it into the cap of my gesso and just putting some large white dots around her neck to indicate a string of pearls. I'm going to get a little bit of shading going on their skin now, so I'm just mixing those two craft paints, the Santa's Flesh and a burnt sienna, to kind of get a mid-tone skin tone so that I can indicate the bottoms of their chins and the shadow around the hairline. Just kind of basically going around. I side loaded the brush, meaning that I filled the brush first all the way across with the lighter color and then just dipped one tip of one side of the brush. It's a small flat brush, so I just dipped the tip of one side and then blended it out onto my palette. So as I'm stroking the brush down, I'm just getting that shadow color on the one side. And it's just a hint of a shadow just to give the skin a little more dimension. Doesn't look quite so flat. I'll come back later and do some more, but just getting that kind of first layer down. So that's what I'm doing here. I wanted to add just a little more detail to the belt, and you can't read that because my camera didn't focus, but it is Arteza heavy body gold, and I'm just going to use a small brush and a little bit of that gold paint to paint in the belt buckle for the girl on the left, just to give her a little shine. I grabbed one of my craft acrylics in a medium bright red, I think it's called bright red, and mixed it with a little bit of the coral color, and I'm going to start on the faces and give the girls some lips. So again, I have a tiny brush I'm just kind of using those pencil lines that I can see as a guide and adjusting as I go, and just painting in the little lips. Then I went back to the burnt umber fluid acrylic, and I'm just gonna start getting the rest of the features down. This is a number 2 liner brush that I'm using. It just doesn't have very many hairs, so it's a little bit harder to control. Wasn't happy with the eyebrows. Looking at it now, I can tell that they're actually up too high, which is why I ended up probably not liking this face as much. But it is what it is. They're tiny. So I'm just going to do very simple features, just arches for the lids of the eyes and kind of dots for the irises. Not very complex at all, just trying to get features on right now. I'll refine them a little bit later, but for right now I just want to get things placed and on the board. And finally I decided those blue buttons needed to be defined a little better, so I'm just adding a little bit of a shadow with the charcoal pencil and activating it with some water. I hope you enjoyed watching this process. If you missed the video, part 1 of the video where I did the background, you can find that on my channel list. And just doing some final touches here. I did at the end put some stamps. It's like a bubble stamp using sepia archival ink. That top right section just looked a little bit too bare for me. I thought it needed more balance, so I put some stamping up there and just a little bit around the edges. And I did add a little more shadowing to the dresses with the charcoal pencil. But basically that's it. So thanks for coming along with me for this 2-part project. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you'll try. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I'd love it if you did that. Give this video a thumbs up, and in the meantime, go make some art. Bye.